I never thought I'd be in a hospital again, not since the day I left the emergency room shaking and jobless. That day still clings to me like a fevered sweat. It wasn't just a job they took from me. It was my reputation, my livelihood, my name. All because she said I wasn't fit to care for patients. All because I questioned a decision that could have killed someone. Dr. Julia Hemsworth, young, connected, confident, and untouchable. I was just a nurse. And a black woman. Easy to blame. Easy to erase. But this time, I was here by choice. I had signed the papers, done all the tests, and tomorrow morning, I'd be donating a kidney to a stranger whose life was hanging by a thread. People kept asking me why. Why would you give away part of yourself for someone you don't even know? The truth? I needed to feel useful again. I needed to believe that the part of me they tried to destroy could still do good. But the universe has a wicked sense of irony. Because 3 days after the surgery, while still sore and stitched, I saw her. In the hallway, tears in her eyes, clutching the hands of her frail mother, fresh out of surgery and recovering well.
I didn't need to hear her say it.
I already knew. I had just saved Julia Hemsworth's mother, and she had no idea. She brushed past me in the corridor, hair pulled back in her usual sleek ponytail, high heels clicking on the linoleum like a war drum.
Julia Hemsworth.
The woman who wrote me off as reckless. The woman whose word held more weight than my years of spotless service. She didn't even look my way. Not a pause. Not a flicker of recognition. I stood by the vending machine pretending to fuss with coins. But my heart was beating so loud, I thought the entire hospital could hear it. I didn't want revenge. Not really. What I wanted was acknowledgement. Not for the kidney. Not for the sacrifice. But for the lie. I wanted her to remember the day she testified that I violated protocol. That I was emotionally unstable. That I could have endangered lives. And now here I was, having saved the life of the woman who gave her life. Fate has a cruel, poetic hand. As she turned into her mother's room, I finally saw her cry. Real tears. The kind that crack a polished shell. I stood frozen.
She didn't know it was me.
She didn't know the body that once walked out of the hospital in disgrace was now stitched up in a nearby room, having just saved the one person she couldn't bear to lose. And part of me wanted it to stay that way. But another part wanted her to see me. Before Julia destroyed my career, I was proud of my name. Elena Matthews. Nurse. Advocate.
Caretaker.
The one who held hands when families fell apart. The one who stayed late when everyone else clocked out. I wasn't perfect, but I was present. I made judgment calls when lives were on the line. And the night that everything crumbled, I did what I had always done, acted on instinct to save a patient. But Julia saw that as defiance. She said I crossed a line. And with her influence, I was erased without appeal. No hearing. No defense. Just silence. I went from saving lives to serving lattes in a coffee shop tucked into the corner of a strip mall. That's where I stayed. For months. Invisible. Forgotten. Until one day, I overheard a conversation at a corner table. A woman in tears, talking about the long transplant list, the poor prognosis, and how she would do anything to save her mother. I didn't see her face. I didn't hear her name. But her pain was too familiar. And I made a choice. I signed up for the donor list the next morning. Not for her. Not for recognition. But because I knew what it felt like to lose someone too soon. It wasn't until I was wheeled out of surgery and her mother was in recovery that I realized fate had a sharper blade than I ever imagined. The woman I gave a second chance to live was the mother of the one who took everything from me. Recovery was harder than I thought. Not physically, that pain I could handle. But the silence? That was brutal. People walked in and out of my hospital room with kind smiles and empty words. Thank you for your bravery. You're a hero. You saved someone's life. But none of them knew the full story. They didn't know that the woman whose mother now lived because of me once stood in a hearing room and said I wasn't fit to wear a badge. Julia Hemsworth still didn't know. And that was the sting I hadn't prepared for. There was a moment, just one, when I thought she looked my way. Her eyes skimmed past my bed. She hesitated, but then she turned.
She didn't recognize me. 3 years had changed me.
I was thinner, tired, no longer the Elena who ran triage with steady hands and fierce compassion. I was just another anonymous act of generosity. And she was still untouched by consequences. As I lay there, connected to machines, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the question that haunted me since the day I signed those donor papers. Did I do this to heal or to be seen? But the answer didn't come. Not yet. All I knew was that I couldn't walk out of that hospital unseen. Not this time. It was 3 days after surgery when I finally saw her laugh. Julia. She was standing beside her mother's bed, hand clasped in hers, eyes glistening, but this time with relief instead of grief. The monitors beeped steadily. The color had returned to her mother's face. And in that moment, Julia looked like a daughter who'd fought a war and won. I watched from the hallway, wrapped in my hospital gown, and 4 stand trailing beside me. And I hated myself for feeling it. Jealousy, because she got her mother back. And I had no one. I lost my mother when I was 7. No father. No extended family. The orphanage took me in, but love never did. I grew up learning to comfort myself through grief, to applaud myself when I succeeded, to wipe my own tears. So watching Julia get a miracle that came through my sacrifice, without even knowing it, made the ache in my chest pull steeper. She hugged the doctors. She brought them coffee. She smiled like someone who had hope again. And still not once did she glance at me. The donor. The reason her mother lived. The woman she accused of being reckless and unworthy years ago. I didn't want a medal. I didn't even want an apology. I just wanted her to remember me. Because what's worse than being wronged? Being erased. It happened by accident. Or maybe it was fate. Twisted, cruel, but intentional. I was walking to the discharge desk, my steps slow, my body still sore from the surgery. And that's when I heard it. Her voice.
Clear.
Familiar. Sharp. Is the donor still here? I just wanted to say thank you, whoever she is. I froze. The nurse pointed down the hall. She just left. That way. I turned. She turned. And for one suspended second, Julia Hemsworth looked straight into my face. Recognition hit her like a thunderclap. Elena? I could see her jaw clench, her body stiffen. Elena Matthews, she said again, slower this time, as if saying my name made it less impossible. My hands curled instinctively around the discharge papers. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She walked toward me, hesitant. Her mother's room was behind her now, and for once, she looked uncertain. What are you doing here? I gave a bitter smile. Saving your mother. Her breath caught. Elena, I didn't know. No. I cut her off. You didn't. You never cared to ask. You just signed the papers and left me to rot. There it was. It was 3 days after surgery when I finally saw her laugh. Julia. She was standing beside her mother's bed, hand clasped in hers, eyes glistening, but this time with relief instead of grief. The monitors beeped steadily. The color had returned to her mother's face. And in that moment, Julia looked like a daughter who'd fought a war and won. I watched from the hallway, wrapped in my hospital gown, and 4 stand trailing beside me. And I hated myself for feeling it. Jealousy. Because she got her mother back. And I had no one. I lost my mother when I was 7. No father. No extended family. The orphanage took me in, but love never did. I grew up learning to comfort myself through grief, to applaud myself when I succeeded, to wipe my own tears. So watching Julia get a miracle that came through my sacrifice, without even knowing it, made the ache in my chest pull steeper. She hugged the doctors. She brought them coffee. She smiled like someone who had hope again. And still, not once did she glance at me. The donor. The reason her mother lived. The woman she accused of being reckless and unworthy years ago. I didn't want a medal. I didn't even want an apology. I just wanted her to remember me. Because what's worse than being wronged? Being erased. It happened by accident. Or maybe it was fate, twisted, cruel, but intentional. I was walking to the discharge desk, my steps slow, my body still sore from the surgery. And that's when I heard it. Her voice.
Clear.
Familiar.
Sharp.
Is the donor still here? I just wanted to say thank you, whoever she is. I froze. The nurse pointed down the hall. She just left. That way. I turned. She turned. And for one suspended second, Julia Hemsworth looked straight into my face. Recognition hit her like a thunderclap. Elena. I could see her jaw clench. Her body stiffen. Elena Matthews, she said again, slower this time, as if saying my name made it less impossible. My hands curled instinctively around the discharge papers. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She walked toward me, hesitant. Her mother's room was behind her now, and for once, she looked uncertain. What are you doing here? I gave a bitter smile. Saving your mother. Her breath caught. Elena, I didn't know. No. I cut her off. You didn't. You never cared to ask. You just signed the papers and left me to rot. There it was. Silence. She opened her mouth.
Closed it.
Looked around, like maybe someone would save her from this confrontation. But this wasn't a courtroom. This wasn't a hearing stacked in her favor. This was me. Standing. Surviving. Speaking. And she couldn't deny the truth this time. Not when her mother's heartbeat was echoing because of mine. Julia stood there like a statue. Elegant, professional, but stunned. She looked like she'd rehearsed 1,000 speeches. But now, every word had fled her mouth. Elena, I didn't mean for things to end the way they did. I believed what they told me. Her voice wavered. For the first time, it wasn't strong. It wasn't superior. It was human. But I had waited too long for those words. 3 years too long. I crossed my arms, the force still taped to my hand. You didn't even look me in the eye during the investigation. She flinched. I was trying to survive too, she said softly. I almost laughed. You survived by stepping on me. She shook her head. No. I was young. Scared. I didn't have the full picture. I stepped closer. But you had the power. And you used it. She blinked back tears. And I felt nothing. No vindication. No joy. Just a hollow ache where forgiveness should have lived. I gave your mother a part of myself, Julia. Something I can't ever take back. But you took my career. My future. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. I truly am. But here's the truth. Apologies don't rebuild broken dreams. They don't erase betrayal. So I said nothing. I turned. And I walked away. Because sometimes the strongest revenge is healing in front of the ones who tried to destroy you. 2 weeks later, I was finally strong enough to walk into the sunlight without wincing. My body healed faster than my heart. But I wasn't wasting time anymore. I had applied for dozens of positions over the last year, jobs far below my qualifications. No one would touch a whistleblower, especially one falsely accused of theft. But one company did respond. A tech firm, new, bold, run by a woman who had clawed her way to the top. The interview room was sleek and minimal. The woman across from me wore power, like perfume. Her name was Ava Morales. I've read your file, she said. I know what they said you did. I braced myself. But I also know what you've done since, she continued. Most people wouldn't donate a part of themselves to save someone connected to their downfall. I swallowed. I didn't do it for her. I did it because I could. And because her son. I stopped myself. Ava tilted her head. Because her son what? Because her son showed me kindness when the world didn't. A long pause. Then, Ava smiled. Not a polite corporate smile, but the kind that meant war and victory and sisterhood. You're hired. Just like that, I felt breath return to places in my chest I hadn't realized were suffocating. This wasn't just a job offer. It was the beginning of something new. A redemption arc no one saw coming. Especially not Julia. I was 6 weeks into my new job when it happened. A call from the front desk. There's a Mr. Adrian Wells here to see you. My heart stopped. I hadn't heard from him since the day I walked out of that hospital room. He'd called a few times, texted once or twice. But I needed space.
To heal. To breathe.
Still, I told the receptionist to let him up. When the elevator doors opened, I barely recognized him. He looked tired, older, like life had humbled him. "Elena," he said, his voice unsure. I stood still, hands clenched at my sides. "Why are you here?" "Because I owe you everything." He stepped closer. "My mother told me what you did, and what she did. I don't know how to make that right." I didn't speak. "Not yet." "I was a coward," he said. "When they accused you, I should have fought. I should have believed you." "You didn't," I said flatly. "You chose your comfort over my truth." He nodded. "I know." Another pause. Then, "But I never stopped loving you." That broke something inside me. Because as much as I hated him for what he didn't do, a part of me still remembered who he was before the storm. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I whispered. "I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking for a chance to try." I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. Adrian started showing up, casually, quietly, bringing coffee to my office, waiting at the bus stop near my apartment, texting me articles he thought I'd like, as if trying to find the rhythm we once had. And the strangest thing? He didn't pressure me. Not once did he ask for forgiveness. He just showed up.
Consistently.
Then one night, after a long day, I found him waiting by the corner deli with 2 warm bowls of stew from my favorite food truck. We sat on a bench. We didn't talk for a while. Finally, he broke the silence. "My mom's dying," he said. I looked at him, startled. "She is less than a year. Stage 4 liver failure."
I didn't know what to say.
He added softly, "She wanted to apologize. But I told her she doesn't deserve your peace. Not after what she did." I stared at him. Was this the same man who once chose silence over truth? "You're different," I said. He nodded. "Pain'll do that. Watching you walk away did that." I didn't forgive him that night. But I saw the cracks in his armor, and sometimes that's where the light gets in. I agreed to see Julia. It wasn't out of pity. It was for closure. She was in a private hospital, surrounded by quiet machines and a nurse who looked exhausted but kind. When I stepped into the room, her eyes widened. For a moment, she looked almost afraid of me. "Elena," her voice was thin, weaker than I remembered. "I didn't think you'd come." I said nothing. "I ruined your life," she whispered. I nodded.
Yes.
"You did." Her lips trembled. "I was scared. Scared you'd take my son. Scared he'd love you more. You were everything I wasn't."
Brave. Smart.
"Whole." "Whole," I echoed, nearly laughing. "I saw the way Adrian looked at you, like you were his home." She turned her face away. I panicked. I lied. The silence between us was thick. Then she added, "I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed to say it. Before I go." I looked at the woman who once took so much from me, and I felt nothing. Not hate. Not anger. Just freedom. "I'm not here to free you, Julia," I said. "I'm here because I'm already free." And as I walked out of that room, I felt years of weight lift off my shoulders. 2 weeks after I saw Julia, a letter arrived. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter, folded neatly in an envelope with my name carefully written in cursive. It was from her. Inside, she'd left more than just words. She included the deed to a small property on the edge of the city. A bookstore she once inherited from her sister, but never used. "This was supposed to be my retirement," she wrote. "But you've earned more peace than I ever have. If you choose to accept it, consider it a seed for the life they tried to steal from you." I stared at the letter for a long time. It wasn't restitution. It wasn't justice. But it was something. Later that night, Adrian came by with dinner. He hadn't heard from his mother in days. When I showed him the letter, he looked like he'd been punched in the chest. "She never gave anything away," he murmured. "Not even her pride." I folded the letter back up and placed it in my drawer. I'm not taking her guilt gift, I said, but I will take her silence. That's priceless. Adrian reached for my hand. We sat there in the quiet, a storm behind us and maybe, just maybe, a sunrise ahead. He didn't ask with a grand gesture. No cameras. No crowd. Just him, on the roof of my apartment, under soft string lights and the hum of the city beneath us. I bought the ring back, Adrian said, pulling out the tiny velvet box. My breath caught. I returned it the day you left, he added, because I didn't think I deserved to dream about forever with you. He opened the box slowly. I've worked for it again. Not with money, but with change, with truth, with time. And if you still have room for me in your story, will you marry me? My heart pounded. Not because I didn't love him, but because I had to make peace with every chapter that came before this one. I touched the ring, then touched his hand. Yes, I whispered. He closed his eyes, exhaling like he'd held his breath for years. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I realized something. This wasn't the fairy tale I once dreamed of as a girl in the orphanage. No glass slipper. No charming prince who rescued me. Just a flawed man and a woman who rescued herself. And somehow, that made the yes feel even more powerful. Planning a wedding should have been exciting. But when it came time to send out invitations, I hit a wall. There was no one to invite. No parents. No siblings. No childhood friends.
Just me.
And for the first time in a long time, it hurt again. Adrian noticed. You don't have to pretend it doesn't sting, he said gently. I just don't want to look like the bride with no roots, I confessed. Like I dropped into your perfect world with nothing behind me. He took my hands. You didn't drop into my world. You built one with me. Brick by painful brick. That night, he surprised me. He gathered the kitchen staff from the diner where I once waited tables. The elderly librarian who used to sneak me books when I was homeless. Even the nurse from the hospital where I first met Julia. He gathered the people who saw me when I was invisible and told them, she's getting married. And you were part of her story. I stood there, speechless, surrounded by faces I never expected to call family. I wasn't rootless. I had grown roots in cracks and concrete, in places no one thought life could bloom. And now, I was blooming anyway. The day of our wedding, the sky threatened rain. But I didn't care. I had stood through storms before. What was a little drizzle on a day like this? I wore a simple dress. Nothing too expensive. Nothing borrowed. But everything about me was new. As I walked down the aisle, I saw Adrian standing there, eyes soft, heart wide open. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this wasn't just a love story. It was a war story, too, of a girl who had no last name worth keeping. Of a woman who had to raise herself, of someone who was seen as disposable until she showed the world she was unstoppable. When it came time to say our vows, I spoke from the scars. I don't come from a place of fairy tales. I come from cold nights and empty plates. But I've learned that the fire in me was never meant to destroy me. It was meant to forge me. And standing here with you, I know now. I was never meant to be rescued. I was meant to rise. Adrian's voice trembled as he replied. I didn't fall in love with a perfect woman. I fell in love with a fighter, with someone who taught me that the strongest love doesn't ask you to save it, it teaches you how to survive. As we kissed, the rain finally came. But no one ran, because sometimes the sky cries for joy too. And in that moment, I wasn't the girl from the orphanage. I was the woman who lived, who loved, and who got the last word by writing a new beginning. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that no matter how broken your beginning, your ending can still be beautiful. If you felt seen, heard, or inspired by my journey, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Reckoning Files for more powerful stories of survival, strength, and sweet revenge. Until next time, keep rising.